I'll just start with a few comments here. I think, watching the film here for a couple of days, we got our hands full. It's a very good football team, very well coached. Coach Fickle's done a very good job of building toughness in this program. I think it's a veteran group. I think on offense, they're led by their quarterback and the running back. They both play really, really hard. They're tough players. They've won a lot of games there. So, they bring different things to the table that we got to be ready for. And then on defense, very, very sound in terms of their scheme. Guys play really hard, run to the ball, and they did a great job last week and got a win against a Power 5 team. So new challenge this week. Got a lot of respect for Coach Fickle and what he's built down there. I think that's a very strong program and in great shape. And so we know they're going to come in here hungry. And being in the same state, we know that means a lot. So, we're up for the challenge, but getting ready for it as we get into Saturday.
We'll open it up for questions. Third row right, Dylan.
Having been able to digest the film, what stood out to you about Justin's performance, good and bad?
Yeah, like I said after the game, I think it was right watching the film was that he played well in terms of game management. Didn't try to do stuff that wasn't there. There was some times where we did get that three-man rush, and he didn't force it, got us going in those drives that we did end up scoring later on. It was because he kind of kept us on schedule and didn't try to force the ball in there. I thought he did a good job there. A few things, reads, a few protection things we got to clean up. But, again, the more experience he has, the better he's going to be.
Front row left, Mitch. Can you talk about what you're going to have to do with him this week to get him better? I mean, what are you specifically working on in practice to get him where he needs to be?
Just the offense. I mean, there's a lot that we do, and there's a lot that goes into our offense. In the run game, there's a lot of reads. There's things that happen pre-snap. There's things that happen post-snap. There's decisions that need to be made in terms of whether he gives the ball, pulls the ball, whether he throws the ball in a perimeter bubble game or something like that. And then in the pass game, there's a ton that goes into that. Are we into the right route? The protection calls, the decisions in terms of progressions, the location of the ball, his technique, all those things come into play.
Front row right, Austin.
Ryan, how well did that defensive performance match up with what you envisioned when you hired these four guys?
Yeah, I think the first quarter it was exactly the way I envisioned, just both sides of the ball. And then it was just okay. I thought later on, I thought the second quarter defense still played good. Offense was just okay. A few funky looks in there, but for the most part, I thought we started out that way. Now we got to be able to sustain it for 60 minutes and play well in through the second half, and that's the challenge. But I do think that we saw some guys flying around. I thought you saw some hard tackling early on. I think you saw guys running to the ball with great effort, and that's what we want.
And you spent a couple press conferences during training camp talking about the turnovers, and you seem to really want to clean that up, and then you go have two of them in the opener. Does that keep you up now at night, or how do you evaluate that moving forward?
I thought overall we handled it pretty good. I know two turnovers we want 0, but the bubble one is a kind of a funky one. We'll clean that up. The other one is inexcusable. The one that J.K. spins on and the ball pops out. So that cannot happen, and we have to get that fixed. But I thought in terms of throwing game, the receivers catching the ball, for the most part, the ball, when you look at it on film, it was secured, it was locked away. It wasn't like it was loose all over the place and balls are flying all over the place like I've seen in some of the games and opening games. But that doesn't mean anything in this week. We got to get to 0 turnovers because that's what the plan to win says, and we got to follow that. So, it'll still be an emphasis this week and moving forward.
Obviously, J.K. has been doing this a long time. He knows that that's important. Do you have to have a conversation? Do you do different drills with them? How do you proceed with a guy like that?
No, I think he just learned right there. When he spun out of that, he puts himself at, he's a high exposure. And anytime you spin, you're putting yourself at, an exposed. And I think more, we just teach him on that end. It's pretty good. But for the most part, when he was running, the ball was locked away. I think he was crushed when it happened. You could see it in his body language. And, I know J.K., he's going to bounce right back from that and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Ryan, for any young quarterback, how difficult of a learning curve is it to sort of not get forced off your spot in the pocket quickly and maybe, not react to pressure that's not totally there yet? And is it any more difficult to get a feel for that when you are athletic and think you can make things happen with your legs?
Yeah, I think there's a long answer to that. I think learning to play in the pocket is something that happens over time. Playing 7-on-7, going to different camps, that's nothing like playing the game of football. And you find more and more that quarterbacks are so used to playing in 7-on-7 situations that it's very unrealistic. You see low, in terms of like their elbow being low and they're not throwing the ball at the right level because there's a line in front of you and you have to see over that line. And when you're athletic, you find ways to survive. How do you survive? You get yourself out of trouble and run. Somebody who's maybe not as athletic, they have to figure out ways to survive. And the way that they survive is by getting the ball out on time, having checkdowns, being accurate with the football, and getting a rhythm. When you have somebody who can escape the pocket, you have to figure out ways to keep him in the pocket and train him the right way so that he feels comfortable when he's in there. And I think from day one of spring practice to where Justin's in right now is considerably different. And we have to keep building on that. But he stood in there and took some shots. The one he threw to Chris Olave, I mean, he took it right in the chin, and I thought he threw one heck of a ball down the field. The touchdown to Ruckert, he got hit right in the mouth. He stood in there. That's playing in the Big Ten, and that's what it's going to be like moving forward.
And then it did seem like Florida Atlantic started bringing a lot of pressure on you guys after you got up big 28-0 or whatever it was. Just how did you think the offensive line sort of handled that when they started throwing different looks at you?
I actually, after watching the film, was more pleased with the way the offensive line blocked than I thought coming off the field. There was some funky looks. I thought there was more yards to be had in the run game than was actually there. And, again, some of that goes back to you see the same defense over and over again. The run's kind of hitting the same gaps over and over again. You get into a rhythm that way. And although it wasn't clean and they did try to bring a bunch of stuff at us, I thought for the most part we moved them. Jonah Jackson had 9 knockdowns in the game, which is significant. I think Josh Myers had 6 knockdowns. I mean, those guys played with effort. And we got to do a better job of finding the hole and making yards after contact. That's the bottom line. And so I know Coach Alford and the running backs will be working on that this week.
Far left, Lori. Coach, some coaches spend a lot of time discussing history with their team because they imagine it gives them perspective and motivation. Some figure, boy, these guys have enough on their plate with what we give them about this week's game. Where are you on that spectrum?
I'd like to talk to the team about where we are. So on Tuesdays, I'll have a team meeting. Today we'll have one at 2:30, and let them know where we're at. Talk to them about the team that's here. Like you said, you don't want to just fill their head full of nonsense, but at the same time, I do think that they need to know where they are. There's a lot that goes in their minds. There's a lot that on their phones and social media and everything that fills their brain. They have academics. They have all their stuff that they're learning in a game plan, but they also need to know the bigger picture. And this week, we got a team who's coming in there with a chip on their shoulder, and they want to prove something to us. So yeah, on a weekly basis, we'll go through all that.
Like, for this week, will you discuss what Luke Fickell meant when he was at Ohio State? Marcus Freeman, John Tenuta, their ties to the Buckeyes. Do you get that into it?
No. I mean, I think they know that and, mention what it would mean to that staff and how hungry they are, but try not to, like I said, get too far into the details of things, yeah. Focus really on what matters,
Coach, I think that you I made it clear that J.K. is going to be the bell cow of this offense. I was wondering, do you have an impression on how Master Teague ran the ball in the second half? I know he's banged up. And do you have any idea of giving him more carries down the stretch? Because a lot of people thought he looked well.
Yeah, no, I thought Master ran well. Unfortunately, Master's been out for a bunch of the spring and then for preseason, so he hasn't practiced like a starter should or even a backup should. And so because of that, that stunted his progress. But that being said, when he was in the game, I thought he ran hard. I thought, he saw stuff. It wasn't always perfect, but he took care of the ball, and he was physical. And, he carried some defenders with him. When there was contact at 3, he was finishing them at 6 and 7. So I thought that was a good start, and that was definitely a flash for us on offense.
Coach, sticking with the running back situation, but just the recruiting scenario or situation, when you have a class that's this full, but there's one specific position where you thought you had some guys and they ended up going elsewhere, and you get into the season months, and this is your first time going through this. What's your take on the desperation to try to fill a position when things don't really go the way you planned, and how do you attack just one specific position when the rest of the class is basically full?
So we're full right now at running back. You have Steele, you have Marcus, you have DeMario, you have Master, and then you have J.K. So we don't have room for another guy. Now that being said, we're always going to recruit a running back, and we have recruited running backs, and we're going to continue to recruit running backs. And so what we have to do is we have to make sure we're evaluating this fall to see what comes up here this fall. And there are some guys that we're going to continue to recruit. and see where the season goes and when it gets into December where we're at. But right now we have 5 running backs, and that's all we can have in terms of our numbers. And so we'll see how things shake out. We'll see who's on our recruiting board getting into December, but we're going to continue to look at guys that we've evaluated, reevaluate, and then kind of see where we're at as we get into November, December.
Nobody goes pro, you don't take one?
Right, so if somebody went pro, then we'd be short one. Yeah.
Third row left, Dan. Ryan, Cincinnati's defense was among the better in the country last year. They had a good start to the season last week. What are the things that you see when you're watching them on film that you think makes them successful?
Well, I think they're well coached. They're disciplined. They play hard. You can tell that they are a veteran group in terms of they play with older guys. I don't know how many of their guys have redshirted, but there's quite a few seniors and some grad transfers and some older guys that have played football there before. And so anytime you have older men in your program, it matters. And I think again it comes down from the top. I think that they're not going to give you a game. You have to go win the game and take it from them. And I think that's on both sides of the ball. They're not going to give up a lot of big plays, and they're also going to run the ball and not turn the ball over on offense.
Luke Fickell and Marcus Freeman are both guys who are from here. Have you had much interaction with those guys at all? Do you know them at all?
Yeah. I don't know Marcus as well. I've had a couple conversations with him, and a lot of respect for what he's done, and obviously what he did here. And then Luke, tremendous amount of respect for him. I've gotten to know Luke a little bit and his family, but not a ton. Had several conversations even this summer, but again, a tremendous coach, and what he's done here speaks for itself.
Ryan, you just mentioned the way that Cincinnati runs the ball. We've watched Michael Warden play for years in the state of Ohio. He's an interesting style of back in that he can run to and through contact. When you're preparing for a back like that, how does it change defensively the way you evaluate an opponent and what that can represent in a game?
Yeah, I mean, again, you don't prepare any different, but I think you need to know what people's strengths and weaknesses are. There's certain guys that like a Rondell Moore at Purdue. He's a little bit more of a shifty, short area quickness guy. Then there's the bigger, backs maybe from, Michigan State. And then you have different styles of backs. And I think some of that has to do with the type of runs that they're going to see. But then also, how are you going to get the guy down and how is the game going to progress? And I think this style of back is somebody that gets stronger as the game goes on. So we need to get – one guy's got to be there, but then 2 and 3 got to make sure it's a gang tackle and we get them on the ground.
You mentioned the shots that Justin took in the pocket. You also took several running the ball.
Yep.
Just were you uncomfortable with how often he was hit Saturday?
Yeah. Those shots should not have been taken, and that's some of the stuff we're talking about in terms of cleaning up. I thought he did a pretty good job of getting down when he was out there scrambling. He didn't take too many shots and made pretty good decisions in the run game. And I thought one of the times he took a sack he didn't need to. He could have thrown that away. But that's all part of the learning curve. You can't replicate any of that stuff in practice. And so he's learning when to slide, learning when to get down, learning when to throw the ball away. And there's going to be times where he has to be physical. And if it's 3rd and 4 and he's got to get that first down, he's got to do that. But he's also got to learn that this is a long season.
Second row left, Steven.
Last year, because of some of the limitations you had at quarterback, especially running the ball, you guys kind of built in some packages for Tate Martell, especially in the red zone situation. You guys also struggled in the red zone, maybe a little bit more than you would have wanted to. This year, you scored twice in the red zone, and you've got a guy you don't necessarily have to take off the field in those situations. Is there a benefit to having a guy like that in comparison to what Dwayne was?
Yeah, I think he does bring a different skill set to the table. Not that we didn't really do that down there yet the other day. We still brought in 2-3 tight ends and got big and ran the ball, and I thought that was good. We need to do that. We need to set that precedent that we're going to be physical on guys, be able to move people. And then throw play action pass. That's a huge part of this thing. And so, but Justin does also bring that athleticism to the table, and so that'll be something that we're going to use moving forward. But having the ability to do both, I think, is really important. I think it's hard in a quarterback to rely on him when it comes down to running the ball to carry that load. And so we do have 2, 3, 4 tight ends that we can put in a game, and we need to get those guys in there and let them move people.
Are you happy that I guess you don't have to take the quarterback off the field this year to be able to do that?
For sure. Yeah.
Fourth row middle, Patrick.
Ryan, going back to the questions about Luke, just as you've kind of familiarized yourself with Ohio State history, how much does he come up, given he was a player here for 4 or 5 years, came back as a coach, came back again as a coach, worked his way up. how much have you learned about him in your kind of study of Ohio State history?
Yeah, no, a good amount. He's got a decorated history in terms of what he did, off the field with his wrestling career, and then what he did as a player, and then as a coach, and winning a national championship, and what he did with some of the players here in recruiting, and his relationship with Mike Vrabel and all those guys that he was with, and what he's done, in the community with some of the charity work he's done. So again, a lot of respect, and a lot of people talk about him when you talk about some of the Ohio State greats.
You mentioned the tight ends in the red zone, but you talked all offseason about that was one of the most improved groups, one of the more veteran groups. Obviously, we saw Jeremy involved in the passing game, like you talked about. Is that kind of a microcosm of what you expect from that position group, or was that more of a matchup thing with Florida Atlantic?
A little bit of both. Yeah, a little bit of both. I thought that fit well in that game, and that's a little bit of a different feel. Lining up and trying to snap it with 30 seconds on the shot clock every play, as opposed to lining up in two tight ends and pounding somebody. That's a little bit different. And again, I really think it's important for us to have both identities, and so we're trying to build that identity as we go. And it's not just going to happen overnight, but I think our ability to go in and out of those two different things are going to be really good.
Yeah, the saying in football is that you have to improve the most between game 1 and game 2. How much will you have to improve against UC?
Significantly, I think. We have to play for a full 60 minutes. Those first 6-7 minutes or whatever that was just completely dominant, but then the rest of it was just okay. And so we can't take a deep breath after we go up like that. We have to continue to sustain, and then if we, in that game, if we take some of the starters out, that's the coach's decision, and so we have to make sure we're putting our pedal to the metal and finishing off the games. But we're gonna have to play better. I mean, this is a really good team who's won a lot of games, and they just beat a Pac-12 team, and on a coaching staff that I got a lot of respect for. So yeah, I mean, this is a team that, although they're not a Power 5 team, their talent level is just as good as most of them.
And I think all the offensive linemen were champions. You mentioned J.K.'s fumble. Were you displeased with how he played?
No, but we all know what J.K. can do, and I think anytime you fumble the ball, that's a critical error, and so if it's the number one plan to win, then we can't have that happening.
Yeah, you guys got under center there pretty quick in the game. Who saw that coming? What did you like about that? Coach Day?
Well, I think it gives us some versatility and some flexibility in terms of what we're doing. And I know you guys were asking me that all preseason, so I was trying to keep that trying to keep it under the vest. But yeah, it's out there now. I think that it gives us a lot of things, and I think it gives us some direct runs. I think it gives us some play action pass. I think it's good to have for a lot of reasons schematically. And we've done a good job with that. Justin and Josh have done a pretty good job with that, and so we're going to keep building that package as we go.
And two of the quickies, Chase Young seemed to have a game. I mean, at least what did you see from him? Not just from a playing standpoint, from a leadership standpoint. What just stood out? Strong
presence, strong personality from start to finish all week. He was strong on the field. He was strong before the game, and then on the field, he backed it up. So it's funny, some guys can be leaders in certain ways, but when you're strong and you're in front of the team, then you play the way he does. That's a sign of a great leader.
Yeah, and I know the second and third quarters are kind of weighing on you a little bit, the way the offense waned for a while. But what did it mean for the team, for its Dauber, for its reputation nationwide and stuff, to get off to a start like that with a quarterback who transferred in? What does that do from a confidence standpoint for the group, and also its reputation?
Yeah, I mean, everybody was kind of flying high during that time, and then I think that's what we're capable of. We talked about coming out to a fast start, and that was about as fast as I've been around, and so that was good. I mean, that goes to show the explosiveness of what we can be, and I think everybody felt that. Now it's time to keep building on it as we go.
Far left, Matt. You talked about it, needing to sustain it after that quick start. But when you looked at it, what did stall you? Was it your own mistakes? Was it taking the foot off the gas maybe mentally? Was it Florida Atlantic? As you looked at the film,
I think it's hard. Yeah, I think it's hard when you say, well, we scored 28 points in the first half. You'd be like, wow, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good day. I'd take that because we're on pace for about 60. But when you start that fast, it's like, okay, why don't we score every series? A little unrealistic. I mean, they have good players and good coaches, and they do a good job. And the one drive right there, we hit the swing to DeMario. He kind of got hit late there. They didn't call it. Okay, the next play, we get the offensive pass interference on Olave. That ball would have probably been inside the 10-yard line. They call offensive pass interference. We throw the fumble on the backwards pass to Garrett. They get the turnover just like that. And so it was just some of those things. We got a couple holding calls that got us off schedule and didn't convert on third down. And so some of those things. And then I think when we came out in the third quarter, we kind of pounded it on them a little bit, got a couple drives going, and then kind of finished the game. So a little strange, the way the game played out, but a lot to learn from.
Is there any improvement area that you look at from week one to this week that jumps out at you like we have to get this, fixed?
Just overall execution, and playing clean and no turnovers, for sure. And then the penalties got to get cut down. I thought we did a much better job. That's been one of our emphasis points with the procedure issues. There was a couple holding calls. We got to get our hands inside on that. But for the most part, it was pretty clean that way. And so, those are all the things. We got to win the line of scrimmage. We got to run the ball. We got to be explosive in the pass game, and then go from there and do a good job in the red zone.
You talked a bit about Justin already, but looking back, was there a favorite play or sequence that got you particularly excited about his potential?
Believe it or not, it was one of his throwaways on third down. There was nothing there. It was something you may not even notice. It was a 3rd and 8, 3-man rush. They got a guy through. There was nothing there. He took the ball and threw it in the stands. To me, that was my favorite play of the day because he's understanding what it means. And it's very hard for somebody who hasn't played a lot of football to understand that play right there is just as important as the play you make, because if you try to throw the ball into traffic and turn the ball over there, it's a disaster. We got a good defense, punt, put him inside the 10-yard line, and then we'll get the ball back soon enough and we'll have another shot. So I thought, and there was several of those. There was actually a couple where he didn't have it, and he got us to 2nd and 6, and he scrambled for 4 yards. Those are my favorites. The post to Olave, the throw to Jeremy. Those are what I'm talking about in terms of the big plays will come, but you have to manage the bad plays and it'll make bad situations worse.
And Chris Chuganoff was the guy that came off for Justin in the late. Is he the backup or was?
Yeah, we don't have a backup. Chris, we decided to put Chris in the game, at the end, and he's had a good camp. But those guys will continue to battle it out through practice.
Second row middle, Bruce. Have you talked to Chip since they played Cincinnati?
Yes, I have.
Anything you can share or care to share on what he told you?
Yeah, we didn't talk too much about the game, really. We talked about, my college coach who's going through a tough time right now and a few other things, and, wished him luck this week against San Diego State, and we kind of talked about those kind of things and talked about his team, talked about our team and kind of where things are going, and that was it.
Obviously, without saying what it was, do you get into schematics and what didn't work or did work for them, or do you not talk about that?
Not really. Typically we would, but there was some things that were more important at the time to talk about, and so we really didn't get into all that.
Hired on December the 10th at Cincinnati. You were hired here on January the 3rd. I don't know if you even came in and looked around, but were you guys literally 2 ships had passed in the night when you talked to him Saturday before the game? Will that be the first time you guys have ever spoken to each other?
No. I've seen Luke before. I've seen him at different events and different things. Yeah.
One last thing. Justin had a big game. Jalen Hurts had a big game. Jacob Eason had a big game. You're a quarterback guy. 3 transfer quarterbacks all had big games. What's the challenge coaching a guy like that who's not recruited, not redshirted in your system, comes in? I mean, obviously, Eason redshirted, but, the challenge of coaching him and getting him up to speed right away that results in the kind of statistical performance all 3 guys had.
I think it's something that we have to get used to in college football, unfortunately. Whether it was Dwayne Haskins for 1 year or, Trevor Lawrence playing last year or Bo Nix playing, as a freshman the other day, Sam Howell at North Carolina, and then this transfer situation. So guys are getting on the field early. That just is the trend right now in college football with quarterback play. And so we just got to do a good job. You got to understand how you're teaching concepts and make sure that you're not exposing them to too much early on and build their confidence as they go. And I do think there's an art to it. I think it's important not to put too much on them early on and teach them certain things and then don't get rewarded for bad behavior, because sometimes when you're a really good athlete you can get away with things that are going to hurt you down the road in bigger, tighter games, and so that's all part of the process.
Front row left, Doug.
How did you arrive on DeMario as your main return guy, and how do you think he did?
I thought he was solid. I mean, he was the special teams player of the week for us on special teams, and I think he had 93 return yards. Just missed 1 to start the game. He got his heel clipped, I think, right down to like the 30-yard line. And I thought he was solid. I thought there was a couple that maybe he could have got his hands on the punts. That it was a funky deal though. They were doing the rugby punt, and he kind of punted the ball across his body, and that's a little bit harder to pick up. And so we lost some yardage on that. But he took care of the ball for the most part. That was his number one job going into the game, was ball security, and he did that. So it's a start. But we got a new challenge this week. So overall, I thought he was solid, but he can be better too.
You've said a couple times in different circumstances, failing is one of the best ways for you to get better. And you know this by now at Ohio State. In the big picture, you guys don't fail much. You have to learn from wins, or you're not going to learn anything. You've talked about second-team defense, or what you guys could have done better to keep it going offensively. How much have you been on the guys? How much do you want to push that, and be hard on them even in a good win, or how much do you want to make sure they know, hey, that's a good win?
Yeah, that's the balance you find. I mean, if it gets too negative, you don't want that either. You got to be positive and make sure you reward the guys who graded champions and the guys who played with energy and the guys who played hard, because there was a lot of that going on. But at the same time, we have a certain standard here, and there's a lot of guys that didn't play quite up to that standard, and we got to build on that. And there's a lot of reasons why. Some of it's inexperience. There's a lot of things that come into play. But that's where, week 1 to week 2 is a great opportunity, and this is a great opportunity for us to learn from. And we go back to work today. We got a team meeting at 2:30, practice today, and got to go about getting those things corrected. We did have, our practice on Sunday. We do that and work through corrections and watch the film and did our champions meetings. But this is the art of coaching right now. This is where you got to get it on film. Now it's real, and let's make the corrections and move forward.
This is a backwards question, and I apologize. You and Luke both were sort of like a fill-in head coach here at Ohio State. In those 3 games for you last year, I know all you cared about was doing the best by the team and winning those games. The idea somewhere in the tiny back recesses of your head that didn't matter as much, how did you balance I hope by staying within this structure of Ohio State, I hope I can at least give people an impression of that I'd be good at this. Like it's not my this is the Ryan Day full experience, but I want them to know, yeah, I can handle that. What was that like for you?
Well, like I said, it was day to day, but when you have a job to do, you got to fill into that role, and I think sometimes you're ready for it, and so many different things come into play in those situations. And we had a tremendous team, tremendous coaches, tremendous administration that we all got together and we worked through that, and some great leaders on that team. And so, it was. Those 3 games, it wasn't easy, but we got through it and we worked through it. But I think, when you're in that role, you have to take on that role. You have to wear that hat. And it's a different hat than being a coordinator, a position coach, or anything like that. And so, yeah, you have to kind of, trigger that job description. And, that's what I tried to do the best I could.
And we're here now. In the end, when you got done with those 3 games, you won for the program, and that was the most important thing. Did you also feel like, yeah, I showed people who Ryan Day was? Not that was the most important thing, but you have personal goals too. Yeah,
but again, it was just on to the next game for me right at that point. I wasn't really thinking about any of that stuff. And, if you really start focusing on things like that, you can get distracted. And I honestly just tried to do the best I could to just focus on beating I think it was Tulane the next game, and just keep building and keeping the offense going and getting Dwayne going. And, when you're in this building, there's so much that goes on. You don't really have time to think much. I mean, it's on the game planning and meetings and practice, and it just kind of goes. And then sometimes when you step out of the building, you realize, you're coaching, and there's the outside world going on. So not a lot of time to do that, and kind of we're getting into that rhythm right now as we get into game 2.
And final couple individuals, right next door, Nathan? You mentioned taking the snaps under center gives the offense more versatility. Was that something you would have wanted for the quarterback this year, whether it was Justin or not? And specifically for him, how does it make him more effective?
I don't know. Justin felt comfortable under center, and it worked. It's not like we've never tried this before. Some things work, some things don't. Some things make sense, and that's kind of like I was talking about going into the season. What's the journey? What's it going to look like? We have new pieces to the puzzle, and trying to stay ahead schematically, and it worked. So. Not that it wouldn't have worked in the past or with some other quarterback, but it seems to be working right now. We like it.
Did you give him and Myers any advice about how to build that rapport, or is that overrated, that center quarterback.
Oh, no, it's real. It's real. So anytime we had a fumble exchange during practice, we made them both do a lap together. So and that started off early in the spring. And as they go around the field together and run together, they have a little conversation about how they get it right. So it gives them a little time to think that through. A little bonding, you know.
Ryan, of all the things you have going on as a head coach during a game, if a defense throws something at you that you're not expecting, how difficult is it to make in-game adjustments compared to everything else you have going on? Is that kind of at the top of the list of most difficult things?
It is. And Kevin and Mike, you know, I thought the communication there was really good, and I think with Stud, you know, I think we're pretty good at that now, and so we can recognize kind of what's going on in game and make pretty good adjustments, and so. We take pride in that, but yeah, that's kind of on the forefront, and then you just kind of lean on everybody else to go through. But one of the things I do have to do is click over, you know, when the defense is over there to make sure if they need a timeout or something like that, I'm involved. So there is a little bit of a balance there.
And this week, do you kind of have to expect the unexpected from Cincinnati's defense, or do you kind of feel like they are what they are?
Yeah, no, they'll have something that we haven't prepared for. That they'll have a good plan, and that they'll have a few change ups for us. I know that'll be part of it, and they've had all summer to game plan, and so we got to be able to adjust and move on from there.